Hey, welcome everybody. Good to see you guys. We're going to give it a little time here for everyone to join. We're broadcasting today on YouTube, similar to what we did Thursday, and also on TikTok. So, for those of you over here on TikTok, you get to see the side of my face for a little bit today. Hey, Dina, good to see you. Good to see you over there. Hey, Okra, welcome. Welcome. I don't know about you guys, but we've got some beautiful weather here in the Ozarks. I spent the whole morning outside uh, doing a little work. And anyway, I'm excited to talk to you guys. Just like every day in the United States now, something changes every day, right? So we have a lot of challenges and a lot of changes, and we're going to talk about quite a bit today. We're going to talk about tariffs, guys. I want to go through. We sometimes forget about the fact that Trump announced these tariffs on the day that he was sworn into office. And I think we're on our 26th or 27th iteration of what these tariffs look like. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today because it's hard to keep up with all of it. Hey, you're welcome, Linda. It's my pleasure. Hey, Vanessa, you're in Springfield. All right. Yeah, me too. I went out and bought some wholesale blackberry bushes to plant at the farm this morning. I also went, I got to tell you guys, for those of you that have been tracking my fitness journey, and it doesn't take much of a look to know that I need to get serious about fitness. Went today and signed up for the local gym, but more importantly, they've got a walking area in the pool for this bad hip. So I'm going to be in there Monday in my swimming trunks and sun shirt, plowing away in that water to see if I can build up some strength in this hip. Ah, it's beautiful here, Zane. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Who knows? Maybe I will run for office someday, Robert. You never know. Never say never. Maybe dog catcher will come open here and I can run for office. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So you guys probably heard, we've called off the tariffs on electronics, and that's when I thought, it's time to go through this timeline again. We got to go through all of the different iterations of the tariffs that Trump's put in place so that we can better understand them. A couple other things I want to talk about today. You may have heard that FEMA has decided they're no longer going to match the funds that the state of North Carolina is putting into hurricane relief. I lived in Lexington, North Carolina for 7 years. I love the state of North Carolina. I've still got good friends there. I know people who are recovering from the hurricane still. And FEMA's made a decision not to do any more funds matching out there. So I want to talk a little bit about that today as well. We're also going to talk about, you guys will love this, as we're talking about tariffs, China has figured out a way to actually profit in the grain industry from the tariffs. So Trump putting the tariffs in place on China and their reciprocal tariffs on American agricultural industry, they have figured out a way with soybeans to make a profit off of the tariffs. So we're going to talk about that as well. Welcome, GR from British Columbia. Beautiful place. Beautiful place. So I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about all of this. Yeah, Vanessa, you planted lettuce. I went yesterday for my own personal garden and I grabbed a whole bunch of herbs and that type of thing. I already had the seeds, that I needed for vegetables and things like that, my sweet corn, but I'm going to put out a lot of herbs this time as well. The doctor and a lot of people that I respect are telling me I need to up my herb game in my diet. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that, and we're going to talk a lot about it. So anyway, welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. Why don't we start out? I want to talk and appreciate you guys on TikTok continuing to hit the like button. Let's see if we can get up to 10,000 likes over there so we can get up on the FYP. But I want to talk about the tariffs because, guys, right now we are on the 27th reiteration of the tariff plan that the president has, meaning since he came into office, we've had 27 changes to what the tariff plan is going to look like. And I want to talk about that today because I think it's just critical when you're going out there, especially in rural America, talking to farmers and ranchers and just people that live in rural America that may have voted for Donald Trump. I think it's critical to understand all the changes so that you can make the case that there's no plan here. We're just flying by the seat of our pants. And in international trade and in agriculture, that's a really bad thing to do. It's a really bad thing to do in life, in life in general, but it's a really, really bad plan when you're the largest economy in the world. And I want to talk about that a little bit today. So, you guys know that on January 20th, when Trump was sworn into office, in his inaugural address, he promised to tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. Now, that laid down the gauntlet right there that he doesn't understand what tariffs are. Because if you've been following us on the back 40 for a while, you guys know I'm going to adjust this one a little bit, guys, because TikTok's giving me a hard time over there. If you followed us anytime at all here on the back 40, you guys know that the foreign entities, the companies, the governments that are selling products to the United States, they do not pay the tariffs. Who can tell me in the comments who pays the tariffs? Who pays the tariffs? You guys know. Let's see it. Who pays the tariffs? That's right. The American people do. We do. And the way that works is if we're buying goods for overseas, the company that's buying those goods to redistribute them in the United States of America, they pay for those tariffs at the point that they buy them, and then they pass them along and increase prices at the point of sale. And we're going to talk about how much these tariffs have already driven up sales prices and overall how they're going to drive up sales prices in the long run. But on January 20th, he announces these tariffs and he falsely tells the American people that we're going to be tariffing and taxing foreign countries and that our citizens are going to get rich off of it. So the bottom line is he doesn't understand how tariffs work. Then on January 26, 6 days later, the president threatens 25% tariffs on all Colombia imports. And do you guys remember why he did that? Because Colombia was tired of all of the deportations to Colombia. And they wanted to put those flights on hold. And they were asking the federal government to do that for quite some time. The president didn't want to do it, so he threatened 25% tariffs on Colombia. Colombia buckled, and they agreed to take these flights. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute because the administration is pushing. Hey, D2, the administration is pushing to be able to deport regular American citizens like me and you to other countries. So we're going to talk about this some more. So he threatens 25% tariffs on Colombia. Colombia says, hey, you know what? We'll take these planes, and he pulls the tariffs off. Then on February 1st, a few days before my birthday, Trump signs an executive order to impose tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. You remember that one? There was a 10% tariff on everything coming from China and 25% on imports from Mexico and Canada. And then you guys, I don't have to tell you what he did. Those were supposed to start on February 4th. And you guys remember what happened, right? It was received very poorly in North America because we have a trade agreement in place in North America with these two countries. Economists, people in his own administration, manufacturers here in the United States, all kinds of people were telling the administration it's a bad idea. So what did he do? Remember how he wriggled his way out of that? You guys remember? He basically asked the Mexicans and the Canadians, the government of Canada and the government of Mexico, he asked them to put in place special asks that they were already doing. You guys remember this? Went down to Mexico and said, we need more troops on the border. They said, no problem. We're already doing that. We need more programs in Mexico to get people off drugs. They said, no problem. We're already doing this. Right? Then he went to Canada and he asked them to do several things that they were already doing. They already had somebody working on the fentanyl issues. They just didn't call him the fentanyl czar. So all they did is change the title of that person. And in Canada and Mexico, we didn't get a single new thing out of the tariff agreement there. They just agreed to do things that they were already doing. And what did the president do? He caved on the tariffs to those two countries. And don't get me wrong. That's a good thing. I'm glad he did it. I'm glad he caved on the tariffs, frankly. But again, it was all a show. It was all a theatrical show. We're going to put these tariffs in place on Mexico and Canada. Then when we realized it was bad, we asked them to do some things that they were already doing. They said, no problem. You got it, DJT. And then we pulled the tariffs off of them. But on February 4th, the 10% tariffs on China did go into place. They announced that they were going to be put in place. And What did China do? They reciprocated. China's 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas products and a 10% levy on crude oil, agricultural machinery, large engine cars, all of this stuff China announced we're going to put in place on February 10th. So to meet that, on February 10th, we have our fourth reiteration already. I mean, remember, sworn into office January 20th, we're at February 10th, and now we're at our fourth iteration of the trade agreement. And Trump announces plans to hike steel and aluminum tariffs, and he's going to start that March 12th. He removes the exemptions that he had placed on his 2018 tariffs on steel, meaning that all steel imports would be taxed at a minimum of 25%. And he also raised the aluminum tariffs from 10% to 25%. Then on February 13th, we get the fifth iteration of the tariffs when he announces a plan for a reciprocal tariff beyond China, Canada, and Mexico, and says he's going to begin applying that to other countries like India and all of the European nations. None of them will be spared from this higher tariff. So on February 13th, we get the fifth iteration of the tariffs. Now, remember, guys, why am I talking about all this? I'm talking about this because the world's watching, okay? The world is watching. They're measuring American confidence. They're measuring American competence. They're measuring, is the president going to stick to these changes when they put them in place? Or is it all smoke and mirrors? Is it all a song and dance? And if it is, how seriously do we need to take these threats? Can America be played now? Have they lost their great place in the world? Are they no longer a serious country? Then on March 1st, we get iteration number 7. Trump signs an additional executive order instructing the Commerce Department to consider whether tariffs on lumber and timber are also needed to quote unquote protect national security. And then on March 4th comes the 7th iteration. Trump's 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico go in effect. Although you guys remember what he did, he backed down again and he limits to 10% on Canadian energy because the Canadians immediately come back and said, if you want to play that game, then we're going to play games with energy coming into the northeastern United States. And the president buckled. We don't want that. We don't want all those people in Appalachia and Ohio and the rural parts of Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. We don't want them to lose power because that could cost us the vote. So we're going to buckle again. So iteration number 7 goes in. The president, again, immediately buckles on his energy tariffs. Then on March 5th, we've got iteration number 8. Remember what the president did? He grants a 1-month extension on his new tariffs impacting goods from Mexico and Canada for U.S. automakers. Because U.S. automakers come back and they say, this is going to crush us. This is a bad, bad thing. It's going to be bad for the United States of America. It's going to be bad for manufacturing. It's going to be bad for the automakers. So Trump backs down once again. Then on March 6th, you've got iteration number 8. You can't make this stuff up, guys. You've got iteration number 8. Trump widens these postponements, and he postponed the 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and some imports for Canada for a month. But he warns, don't get too comfortable because we're going to do it on April 2nd now. You know, when I read all this, guys, when I read this as a farmer, well, just probably even more so as a parent. Tell me if you guys feel the same way, okay? When I read this as a parent, did you have a parent, or are you the type of parent, or do you know a parent? Be heard, I know you know somebody like this. You better stop that or you're going to get in trouble. You better stop that or you're going to get in trouble. You better stop that or you're going to get in trouble. And trouble never comes. And what does a kid figure? I figured it out. That's how my mom was, guys. I figured out pretty quickly I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do, and I was never going to get in trouble for it. Now, my grandfather, he had a little bit different stance on that. But when it was just my mom, I knew what I could get away with, and the world does too. They see it. They see him backing down. I mean, he hasn't even been in office at this point, March 6th. He hasn't even been in office 2 months, and we're on the 8th version of the tariffs. And then March 10th, we get the 9th version of the tariffs. China puts those retaliatory 15% tariffs on American farm products. And the administration immediately starts to back down. They're out there on the road with the new agri secretary that couldn't find a row crop if her life depended on it. Out there telling farmers, don't worry, we're going to try to find the money to help you out if we can, as long as the Biden administration didn't spend all of it. And they don't tell farmers, why did Biden have to spend so much of that money? Because it took 3 years of subsidies to make up for the losses that farmers and ranchers incurred from the tariffs that were put in place during the first Trump administration. Now, I'm going to stop naming off all the iterations because I'm going to get lost as I go through here because there are so damn many of them. But I'm telling you, there were 27, and I'm just going to talk to you about each of them. March 12th, Trump's new tariffs on all steel and aluminum goes into effect. He puts a 25% tariff across the board on all of them. And what does the European Union do? They say, fine. They put duties on U.S. industrial and farm products. 28 billion euros worth. Now, what do you guys think happens to farming equipment here in the United States when farming equipment manufacturers can't sell products overseas because they're priced out of the marketplace? What do you think happens to equipment sales here in the United States? Where do you think they try to make up for that cost? Because the president asked him to do it. Remember when he announced all these tariffs and he told farmers, hey, don't worry about all these tariffs. Don't worry about the fact that you just lost 1.4 billion Chinese bellies that you can feed American agricultural products to. Don't worry about it. Remember what he said at the end? Have fun. Ultra, I'm in that boat too. I got a great deal on mine or I couldn't have afforded it. But the bottom line is prices go up here in the United States, not only because the aluminum and steel is more expensive, so it costs more for John Deere and Case and all these other equipment manufacturers to build, but they're trying to make up for that, but they're also trying to make up for lost sales overseas. So prices go up here. And I can tell you that's already happening. I just bought a big pull behind for my John Deere, and probably 16% higher cost than what it was a year ago. Then we get another iteration on March 13th. That's when Trump, some of you aren't going to like this one. I've got some wine drinkers in my family. Remember on March 13th when Trump said, we're going to put a 200% tariff on European wine? And the European Union came back and said, okay, 50% tariff on American whiskey. Now, I've lived in North Carolina, and when I lived there, I had a great job, and my market was Eastern Tennessee, all of North Carolina, all of South Carolina, and part of Virginia. And I had an opportunity to travel to Tennessee and Kentucky and spend a lot of time in those parts of the country. And there are parts of those states where the entire culture is built up around their bourbon and whiskey trade and how good. I mean, just imagine going to parts of France where wine is the most important agricultural product in that area of France. It's the same mentality, the same way of life, et cetera, in parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, et cetera, where American whiskey and bourbon have been made for over 100 years. Hey, Greg, good to see you from Northwest Ohio. I lived in Columbus for a while, loved Ohio. And they're hurting. I get messages every day. I got a message just a couple of days ago from somebody working for an American bourbon manufacturer in Eastern Tennessee, and they laid off workers. Because American agricultural products are the easiest products to target whenever we see a situation like this where tariffs have been put in place. It's the easiest way for countries to retaliate against us. Why? Because you buy these agricultural products in real time. There's a shelf time, there's a shelf life. You buy them in real time to get them into your country to sell them to the consumers in your country. And it's the easiest way to immediately cut off the spigot and to punish the United States of America. And these foreign governments got smart. Look at what Canada did. They said, okay, we're going to place reciprocal tariffs in place, but we're going to specifically punish the states that voted for Donald J. Trump, the red states. So we're going to put tariffs on bourbon, on whiskey, on products coming out of Texas, on products coming out of Missouri, where I live, by the way, et cetera. Then we get another iteration just a day later on the 26th. Trump says he's putting a 25% tariff on auto imports and that they're going to put it in place April 3rd. Remember that, because we come back to that in just a little bit. Then on April 2nd, he announces his, what did he call it? His long promised reciprocal tariffs. And he declares a 10% baseline tariff on imports from every country. Every country. Remember, that's where he created his Greek letter tariff calculation. Remember that? Where he took the total amount of the deficit in trade with another country like Vietnam, divided it by the overall trade amount between the two countries, divided that in half, and that's what he said the tariffs were from these other countries. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Honest to God, it's like you sent a 7-year-old kid in to take the ACT. Imagine when they get to the math section. They're taking off their shoes. They're trying to find the cheat calculator. That's how this administration operates. I'm going to tell you again how they calculated these tariffs, because I want you talking about this out there in rural America. Let's use Vietnam as an example. And I'm going to use whole dollar amounts to make it easy. Now, a tariff percentage is the tariff placed on a country in addition to the cost of the product you're buying from them. Okay? So in other words, if Vietnam wanted to place tariffs on the United States, they would take none of these prices are right, but just to make the example, they would take a bushel of soybeans at, say, $4. They would place a 25% tariff on there, and the tariff rate would be 25%. It's not difficult, guys. All right? I mean, if I wouldn't have had a teacher that felt sorry for me, I never would have passed math in high school. And I can figure it out. But here's how the Trump administration calculated those tariffs. If the United States of America is exporting $100 to Vietnam per year, and Vietnam is exporting $50 to the United States, that is a trade deficit between those two countries of $50. The Trump administration takes that $50, divides it by the overall $150 in trade. They take that percentage, they divide it by 2, and that's what they're claiming the tariffs are. Do you understand? The key to this is it's not just that they don't know what they're doing, guys. Imagine if you're part of the economic world trade order. You're in another country, Canada, Mexico, South America. I know that's a continent. Don't come at me. But I'm saying you're a country in South America or Europe, and you're trying to calculate how you're going to respond to this tariff game. And the first thing you see is that the United States is basically calculating tariffs by taking off their shoes and socks and counting on their toes while they're writing it all down on construction paper with crayons. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or if you hate politics. You see the stupidity in that. How is the world going to take us seriously in economic trade? Why are they going to be afraid of tariffs? Why are they going to negotiate with us if they can see clearly, based on what we're saying as a government, that we don't even understand how tariffs work. How? It isn't just about Trump. I'm asking you in general, if another country knows that you don't have a grasp of what you're doing, how are they going to take you seriously? How are you going to get them to the table? Because remember, we're on about the 11th iteration now. And remember, all of this started because a guy named Navarro, Jared Kushner, was going through Amazon looking for book titles, and he found a book title that he liked. He thought it was cool, man. Peter Navarro wrote the book. So that's how Peter Navarro qualified to work in the first Trump administration, because he wrote a book with a cool title. And what did he do in that book? We talked about this on Thursday. He fabricated an expert. He took his last name, Navarro, and he used an anagram of that, Ron Vera, and he claimed that Ron was an expert in tariffs. And he laid out all the reasons why tariffs would fix everything that's wrong with the American economy and make America great again. And this was a 100% whole cloth fabricated person, economic expert. So not only do they not currently understand how tariffs work, and what the ramifications of that are going to be, the entire tariff plan that they have is built on a fabricated economic expert in a book with a cool title that Jared Kushner thought qualified that person to be a part of the president's economic plan. And you just go on and on. On April 4th, China announces that they're going to impose a 34% tariff on imports of all U.S. products beginning on the 10th. On April 5th, Trump's 10% minimum tariff on nearly all countries and territories takes effect. Thank you for the gifts, guys. I appreciate it. On April 9th, Trump's higher reciprocal rates go into effect, hiking taxes on imports from dozens of countries. And listen, the administration says it'll suspend most of these tariffs for 90 days right when they announce them. Now, just imagine the way grain sales in this country work, just so you guys know. If we're selling soybeans to China, the Chinese are buying these through large American grain exporters that have export licenses that allow them to sell to China. Now, just imagine you're trying to determine how many soybeans you're going to buy from farmers across the United States of America in order to meet the needs of the Chinese. And there are tariffs. The tariffs are announced, they're taken off, they're delayed, new ones come along, they get delayed, they're taken off, new ones are added. How do you budget for that? And I'm not just talking about agricultural economics. I'm talking about it across the board. You can't budget for that. You can't plan for that. So China says, we're sick of the chaos. We're going to follow through on our threat. And then Trump comes back and says, okay, fine. Now we've got 125% tariffs on China. I don't know if you guys saw this, but do you know what China said? They basically released a social media release from their economics group, the equivalent of their Department of Treasury, State Department combined. And they said, the tariff levels are so high now that basically it's just ludicrous. Any further tariffs from the United States will just be ignored. That's how scared they are of these tariffs. Listen, you've already jacked them up so high. It's so nonsensical now. You back away, you come back, you put new ones on, you take them off, you delay them. Just do what you want to do, Donald, because from now on, we're just going to ignore the tariffs. And then on the 10th, April 10th, do you remember what the White House had to do? They came back and they said, hey, we made a mistake. Those previously announced 125% tariffs, whenever we were adding up all of the different tariffs that we put in place, we calculated those incorrectly. The calculator now says that those tariffs are 145% when you add them up all together. And China just rolls their eyes. At this point, they just roll their eyes, right? Now, the second thing I want to consider about these tariffs, we've had 27 different iterations of them. You guys forgive me. I'm getting slaughtered by pollen. Here in Missouri, our pollen is 70% higher than it normally is, and it's wiping me out. So we've got this chaos. The world is rolling their eyes at us. And at the same time, don't get me wrong, they're taking it seriously because just like here in the United States of America, you've been watching the markets around the world. They can't handle the uncertainty. That's why Asian markets and European markets are crashing right along with ours. And then they partially come back and then they crash again and we lose the gains. But the administration did something this week that I thought was important, and they tried to slip it under the radar like they always do. You guys know that they've been claiming that all the cost of these tariffs would be paid by the countries where these products are being sold. And we've told you all along here at the Back 40, you also already know this because you're smart, that no, those tariffs are paid by the American consumer. Well, finally on Wednesday, the administration admitted under the radar with no fanfare that prices in the United States of America are going up for consumers as a result of these tariffs. And here's what they said. Here's what they said. They said basically that every 10% hike in tariffs will result in a 2.5% increase in prices. Now, I want you to think about that, right? Thanks, Catch. I appreciate that. My sister tells me that too. Hit the sailing. I want you to think about that. All right. What do we claim is a really good quarter in regard to inflation, right? If it stays below 2%, if it stays at 1.5%, 1%, that's a really good quarter. That's a really good quarter. So I want you to think about when we're talking about tariffs of 145% in some cases, if every 10% raises prices for the American consumer by 2.5%, that's serious money. Do the math in your own head. Do the math in your own head. I mean, it's 28% increase in price in the case of 145% tariff, right? Did I do my math right? I did it in my head, so it could be wrong. But even Trump admitted early on that the 67% tariff on Chinese products would cause products in the United States to go up by 16.75%. He just lied about who was going to pay for it. He lied about who was going to pay for it. So now you've got to calculate these increases in goods in the United States being sold. Those are worked the same way and handled the same way in terms of what it does to the American consumer's pocketbook, just like inflation is. It's the same net effect. It's an increase in cost. That's why we got our 28th iteration today and yesterday of these tariffs when the administration backed away from tariffing electronic goods like phones. Because if you want to piss off the American people, just tell them they're going to have to pay 50% more for their next iPhone or their next Android. So here we go. Change after change after change. Businesses in the United States can't plan for it. Foreign governments and businesses in foreign countries can't plan for it. We're backing away from anything that's politically dangerous for the Trump administration. And it's driving up cost here in the United States. What's that going to mean for people at the bottom of the middle class and below that level who are in poverty? What's that going to mean? Just imagine the impact on a poor family like my family was before we moved to the farm of 16.75% on products across the board. Just imagine that. You may be in that situation right now. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, and I've been there, brothers and sisters, I know what that's like. When I became a single dad, I spent years living paycheck to paycheck until I was able to build my reserves back up. And thank God I had good jobs along the way that allowed me to do that. But I remember what it was like when I first became a single dad, and my daycare was more than my mortgage. And here, in the midst of all of that, not just in rural America, but around the country, in the midst of all that, prices going up because of tariffs, they want to take away Head Start, which is the best young education program in the country, and also the number one source of daycare in rural America and in a lot of urban areas. Pay for your daycare yourself. We don't believe in that investment in young kids. Pay for it out of your own pocket. And then you get forced into a situation where if you live in rural America, there are a lot of cases where you only make enough money at work to pay for your daycare with a little bit left over for food or maybe to pay the electric bill. Oh, and by the way, we're not only going to take away Head Start, your main primary daycare source that educates your kids as well, but we're also going to start cutting Medicaid. We've already refused to expand it in rural America because we want to own Barack Obama, even though he hasn't been in office for years and years and years. But now we're threatening to cut that as well. Oh, by the way, 40 million people have been booted off of Medicaid that qualified under the C-19 parameters that we used back in the day. 50% of kids in rural America, their insurance is funded by Medicaid. 43% overall in rural America. We're going to cut it. We're going to raise your price with tariffs. We're going to do away with your Head Start, and we're also going to take your insurance away. You can start buying it on the exchange with no credits, just like everybody else. More will be booted soon, no doubt about it. Oh, and hey, while we're giving you all this bad news, we're pushing for something else as well. We're going to take public school dollars from you in rural America, and we're going to pay for kids that are already in private school in our urban areas to go to school there at private schools. Why? Because 75% of the kids that benefit from vouchers in the private school system are kids that are already going to private schools in urban areas. So we're going to take that money away from your rural schools, which depend on it just to keep the lights on. And we're going to give that to wealthier kids in urban areas so that they can get a voucher to go to school. And we're going to lie to you about it and tell you that that money's not coming from you, even though you can document that through source after source after source. Oh, and by the way, by golly, don't get sick in rural America. Don't have a heart attack in rural America. Don't get diabetes in rural America. Don't have a farm accident when you're 12 years old in rural America. Why? Because 700 of your rural hospitals and healthcare centers are going to close in the next year. And that's before we cut Medicaid funds, which is going to bounce that number up to 12 to 1,300. In my state of Missouri alone, 64 facilities could close even before they cut Medicaid. Yeah, I'm fired up, and I want you to be fired up too. And I want you to be fired up regardless of whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican that voted for Donald Trump. I want you to be fired up because you're getting screwed over by the government, not only in all parts of the country, but particularly in rural America. And I'm not asking you to admit you were wrong. I'm just asking you to admit you were lied to. They lied to you. They said they were only going to deport the criminals. Now they're deporting everyone. And we have a 75% reduction in the amount of immigrants that are showing up for work in agricultural rural America. And we had oranges rotting in the field in California, dairy products that are beginning to not be able to go out. They didn't tell you they were going to cut 700 hospitals from rural areas in the United States. Just admit you were lied to. And then come join us to do the right thing. And if you're a vet, somebody just stole the words out of my mouth. Radio. If you're a vet in this country, I don't know about you guys, but in rural America, I grew up in a family of veterans. My grandfather on both sides, my uncles, my great uncles on both sides fought in World War II, served in World War II. My family was taught to honor our veterans. And how do you honor them? You don't just put your hand over your heart and sing songs on Veterans Day and on the 4th of July. You do those things, but you also honor them through the VA and through the programs that are necessary to give them the health care they need because of the way their bodies were broken down when they served. Agent Orange in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, burn pits all throughout the Middle East in every single different conflict that we were in. And while he's out there cutting these programs and he's firing veterans that serve in the VA because veterans like it when other veterans are helping them, not only from a behavioral perspective dealing with PTSD, but acting in that role of nurse or orderly or whatever it might be, we're firing them right and left. And we may fire 70 to 80,000 more of them. And oh, by the way, guys, by the way, while we're cutting these programs and why they're on the chopping block and while we're planning for more cuts later on, we're going to have a big military parade on Trump's birthday. We're going to take millions of dollars and we're going to pay for tanks and missiles and armored personnel carriers and all these other things. We're going to pay for them to do a little parade on the president's birthday so that he can overcompensate for shortages in other parts of his life. Sorry. But there's got to be a reason for it, and that's the only one I can think of. I mean, because surely he doesn't have authoritarian tendencies, right? So he must be making up for it in other areas. A GD military parade while we're cutting veterans' benefits. I'm not asking you to admit you were wrong. I'm just asking you to admit you were lied to. When you signed up to support him, did you sign up for cuts in VA, for cuts in what we're doing for our veterans while we're hosting a multi-million-dollar military parade in Washington, D.C.? If you did, shame on you. But the truth is you didn't. And you're having a hard time admitting that you were lied to and getting on the right side of this. Just do it. My grandpa always used to tell me the easiest way to take off a bandage is just to rip it off. Yeah, you might get a little bit of a hard time from your friends and family, but hell, you've been giving us a hard time for 12, 14 years over this guy. Just rip the Band-Aid off, clear your conscience, and do the right thing. Because there is no way, if you grew up in rural America, you can think that this is right in your heart of hearts. No way. You can't think that cutting money from rural schools to give to the wealthy in urban areas is the right thing to do. You can't think that taking away the farm workers from farms and ranches all over this country that provide the food that our families eat is the right thing. You can't believe that closing rural hospitals and rural healthcare centers and making it even more dangerous to live in rural areas if you have a medical issue or a farm accident is the right thing. I know you because I am one of you and I grew up with you. And if we were talking about anybody else besides this president, you would be calling BS and you would be doing it immediately. Imagine if you read on a right-wing conservative news site that President Biden was going to cut 700 rural hospitals across America, and by cutting the funds that feed them, maybe 1,500 to 2,100. There would be an outrage. They're being outraged. Imagine if you found out on a conservative right-wing news site that the top 419 agricultural counties in this country are beginning to lose population, their schools are closing, and their farms are being bought up by Wall Street because of specific policies being implemented by a Democratic president. You would raise hell. You would be at the state capitol, along with all of those liberals and middle of the road Democrats protesting as well. Well, folks, it's time. You come from a history of that, guys. I'm looking and talking to you, rural America. You come from that history. You just don't know it because you've never been taught that in the late 1800s and early 1900s, your great grandparents and great great grandparents marched on the streets of our rural towns in the Midwest to push progressive policies, pushing back against oligarchs, pushing back against tariffs, pushing back against the wealthy buying up small farms, and putting small farmers and ranchers to work as sharecroppers on those farms. Your great grandparents and great great grandparents marched in the streets to fight that. And they built the Grange movement in this country. And they built the Farmers Union in this country. And they raised hell. And when I say they raised hell, I can't even tell you all the things they did because they would pull the live down. You come from that. If you do the research in your family and you live in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, any of these other states, if you look at your past, you're going to learn that you had some family member that marched in the street for progressive issues, to fight tariffs, to fight the oligarch. These are the people you come from. And when you call us un-American, because we're doing that now, when you tell us we don't know what we're talking about, when you tell us that's not what rural America is all about, you're indicting your great grandparents and your great great grandparents. Because by God, they weren't embarrassed to get out there and say what was right for rural America. You may be, but they weren't. You were lied to. Just admit it. Go out there and read about it. Google it today. If you supported Donald Trump, I'm not going to call you stupid. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to tell you, go out there and Google the Grange movement. Go out there and Google the progressive farm movement in this country. At one time, the progressive farm movement, guys, was the largest political party in the United States of America. Think about that for a minute. At one time, the progressive farm movement in this country built the largest political party and movement in this country. And your people were part of that. They didn't forget where they were going. You forgot where you came from. They did not forget where they wanted to go. You forgot where you came from. Honor them by doing the same thing. Honor them by shedding yourself of this skin of 40 years of conservative talk radio on the farm and at the job site, lying to you about where your family came from, lying to you about what it means to live in rural America, lying to you about what these folks are doing to rural America. Because your family comes from that progressive farm movement. How do I know that? Because it was made up of conservatives, liberals, middle of the road, men, women, people of color. Do you guys know that that progressive farm movement was so progressive that they made women and farmers of color part of the movement? African American farmers were in the movement and they played a leadership role. Women were in the movement and they played a leadership role. And your great grandparents and great great grandparents were part of that. They didn't lose their way, you did. I am not going to stop preaching this message until the day they plant me in the ground. Those are your people that were preaching that. Those are your people that were fighting for that. They knew that the oligarchs weren't looking out for their best interest. They knew Wall Street wasn't looking out for the small family farm and ranch. It was us together, regardless of whether we were conservative, liberal, independent, moderate, middle of the road. We joined together to push back against these things. We did. We did. Solex, 30% of people in rural America did not vote for this guy. 30% of farmers and ranchers didn't vote for this guy. We got to remember, when we get that brush out, we can't paint with a broad brush. And the truth of the matter is, if we don't stop the insanity, it's not going to be the people on Wall Street that hurt. It's not going to be the wealthy that hurt. It's going to be that poor kid like me that grew up and spent his first 7 years of his life in government housing on food stamps that's going to hurt. So the tariffs are in disarray. The cost is being borne just by us. And now, last thing I'm going to discuss on the tariffs, because I want to tell you how crazy things have gotten. The Chinese have figured out how to profit from the tariffs. They are buying up reserves. They bought soybeans even under the tariffs this month because they're building up their reserves. Just read an article yesterday from AgWeb, Farm Journal. If you guys want to, regardless of where you live, if you want to follow the news, I like to go to Progressive Farmer and I like to read the AgWeb Farm Journal. Just read an article out there yesterday that said that China is building up their reserves. They're paying the tariff rates. They're building up their reserves because they think that this tariff policy is going to be so bad for American farmers and ranchers that in the end, they're going to quit growing these products. And the Chinese think that they can then auction the soybeans that they have in reserve off at a higher rate than what they paid for them. And you're absolutely right. Chinese used to only buy 13% of their goods from Brazil. That's at 43% now. And those markets are probably never going to come back unless we get a president that really does know the art of the deal. But think about that. They're taking American ag products, they're buying them with the intention of re-auctioning those things off once our farm and ranch segment is so devastated that farmers quit growing these products and just rely on subsidies and bailouts. There's no part of this, guys, that's good for rural America. No part of it. No part of it. If you want to join us, before we get into these other topics, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. If you want to join us, we have formed an organization called the Back 40. And if you grew up in rural America, you know what the Back 40 is. That's where you go start the bonfires. That's where you go sit down and have the big talks. That's where you plant those new ideas. Not only have we formed the Back 40, and you can join us by going to www.theback40official.com, all spelled out, www.theback40official.com. You can go in there, you can sign up to get updates, you can see where we're speaking around the country so you can come join us. You can buy a great mug. You can buy a t-shirt. More importantly, you can organize. We have been organizing all over the country. We stopped some stuff here in Missouri in this last election cycle, and Will Westmoreland didn't do it. I'm just the pretty face. I'm just the pretty face, guys, behind the back 40. All right. It's everybody that belongs to the back 40 that does the hard work. We went out there and we stopped sanctuary cities from the unborn from coming in and criminalizing women's reproductive care in this state. We went out there and we prevented the election of Christian nationalists to school boards that were going to ban books and teach religious curriculum that belongs in my house and in my church. That's where I wanted my kids to learn it, not from their teacher at school. And you know what? Teachers don't want to teach it. We're doing all of this work at the Back 40, and you can go to www.theback40official.com and you can join us there. The other thing we've done is we've created a nonprofit called the Back 40 Action. That website should be up this week. And what we're doing there is we're going across the country to educate people about good policy for rural America. I am going to be in St. Louis at the end of this month. In May, I'm going to be speaking to 300 people in northern Missouri. I've got events coming up in Texas, in Kansas, in Illinois, in South Dakota, in upstate New York, in North Carolina. And some of these are in front of 100% red Trump supporting crowds. And you know what? I love it. I catch more heat from people that believe the way I do politically, telling me just to give anybody that doesn't agree with me the middle finger. But I'm telling you, every time I go talk to 100 people that voted for Donald Trump, I get 3, 4, 5 of them that come up to me afterwards and say, this is crazy. It's time for us to work together. And I don't say, you're stupid. We don't want your help. I say, here's how you can get plugged in. Those of you that live in rural America, farmers, ranchers, people that live in rural America, you know that there was a time when lots of our rural areas were blue. They were Democratic. And they changed that over 40 years. They changed that over 40 years. It's going to take us time. It's going to take us time. All right. I want to talk about a few other things here. I'll be in North Carolina at a farm in Western North Carolina, be heard. More to come on that. We've got a call this week. There's a farm to table farm out there, and we're going to be there on that farm. Aggravated, I'm not sure how to take that. I thought a peepaw patch, am I wrong? I thought a peepaw patch was don't peepaws aren't they fake? Don't they produce copies of themselves? Or am I just overthinking it? I'm not sure. You got to tell me. You got to tell me. All right. Let's talk about a couple of other things here, guys, that really have me worried. Did you guys see that in North Carolina, the administration has said that FEMA is no longer going to stop matching funds from the state of North Carolina to help people that were harmed by Hurricane Helene? Not sure if you guys saw this or not, but they have decided. Now, listen, this is after all of the conspiracy theories. You know, God bless him, our good friend Skylar Holden. You know, we reached out to Skylar, and Skylar said right here on our live that he thought Donald Trump should be impeached. But then he got his money, and that changed his opinion right back to MAGA. But you know, there are a lot of people like him. Like I saw one of his videos, and I shouldn't point him out directly because there are a lot of people that absolutely 100% forwarded all these conspiracy theories about North Carolina. Hundreds of people died in the trees and nobody ever picked them up. And they lied about the number of people that were injured and hurt, et cetera. I mean, they went after the Biden administration in force with all of these conspiracy theories, and the Biden administration's not doing enough. And yeah, there was one FEMA official who did the wrong thing and made a comment about not helping people that voted for Trump. And that person was immediately taken out of the process. But this is what the Trump administration does. It's all talk. So they haven't even been in office 6 months. And what are they doing? They're telling the people that are trying to recover from Hurricane Helene, we're not going to match funds anymore because we want to put these cuts in place. And I don't have to tell you guys, I know people that live in Western North Carolina. I talk to them on a weekly basis. Those of you that live there know they're still trying to recover from this. They're still trying to recover from this. I mean, they're right in the middle of rebuilding and trying to get their lives back to normal. And the federal government is stepping in to say, we're not going to match North Carolina funds anymore. Now, why do you think that's happening? It is happening because of the Doge cuts and because they don't care if it's going to have an impact on North Carolina. But I wonder if it has to do with the statewide office holders who are Democrats that won office and making them look bad. They play all kinds of games in North Carolina. Look what they did in the Supreme Court race out there. They're ruling thousands of votes as unqualified so that they can drop those votes. And the Democrat who won the race for the Supreme Court will then be called a loser. And they can put the Republican onto the Supreme Court to do all the crazy things they do, like suppress the vote, change voter suppression laws, redistrict, gerrymander, all of these other things. They're playing games in North Carolina. I can, Marilyn. We'll talk. We talk about that a lot. People that are regular on the back 40 know that, but I will talk about it again before the end of the live. But what they're doing in North Carolina is unconscionable because there are people that are in the middle of recovery right now, and they're taking away these matching funds, which normally would have been left in place for up to a year or more, at least 6 months, but usually up to a year or more. That's right, B. Heard. They're still right in the middle of critical cleanup. And all North Carolina is asking them to do is just keep it up for 6 months. If you can't do what you normally do, just keep it up for 6 months. And it's not just Democrats elected out there that are asking for this, it's Republicans as well. Chuck Edwards, who's a Republican congressman, I think it's up in northern North Carolina. It's Western North Carolina. He's calling them out as well. You know, now some of that's obviously self-preservation because they want this money to keep coming for the cleanup. But look at what he's doing to his own people. I mean, I know North Carolina politics. Once you get outside of Asheville, it is extremely red. It's just like Missouri. St. Louis is blue, Kansas City is blue, Springfield is a little bit blue, Columbia is a little bit blue. But you get outside of those cities and it's dark red. And it's the same way in North Carolina. You get outside of Asheville and it gets extremely red. He doesn't even care about the people that voted for him. Thanks, Robert. Thank you. Because I feel like working for FEMA is just like being in the military. I don't think a lot of you know this, but I worked for AT&T as an executive, and I was based in Joplin, Missouri, and I left about 15 minutes before the tornado hit to go home. I got off work and I left. And I saw what FEMA did down there. And guys, it was brutal. I think we had 7 or 8 employees that lost loved ones. And I mean, it was to the point where people were leaving to go hold the hands of their family members who were literally passing away in real time in Joplin. I've seen what FEMA can do. I've seen FEMA on the ground. My sons and I, we got in our truck. We drove down there the next day, and we were out there. We didn't do anything special. There were thousands of people from around Missouri and Oklahoma and Kansas and Arkansas that poured into Joplin with chainsaws to help cut down trees and clear out woods. My boys and I went down and did it. We hauled tarps in for the people there. And there were thousands of people doing that kind of thing. And I saw what FEMA did on the ground there with immediate cash relief for people that needed it. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that I saw after all those horrible things happened that were shedding tears of joy because FEMA was there and they felt like, for the most part, their government had their back. And now we want to get rid of FEMA. We want to get rid of FEMA. We put FEMA in place through our elected officials because the American people said, at the very least, we can stand up with our dollars to support Americans that have gone through some horrible natural disaster, whether it's a fire or a flood or a hurricane or a tornado. We have said, at the minimum, to be American means that you stand up for your fellow Americans during their time of need. Not this administration. No, we're going to get rid of it. We're going to get rid of it. Even in a red state, guys. Even in a red state. Then on top of that, we've got the president pushing for a legal system that allows even American citizens to be deported. People like me and you and others that are speaking out against this administration. Did you guys see what the president did this past week? They issued a warning for anybody that might be perceived to disagree with the president. Anybody. Not just college students that have come here from other countries that are sowing their political oats. Donald Trump and his White House, they sent a threatening message to anyone in the United States that might even be perceived to disagree with them. And that message was, don't do it or else. Don't do it or else. Now, this is the guy, remember, that spent his entire campaign telling us that the Justice Department had been weaponized and that needed to change and that needed to be stopped. Now, why did he think it had been weaponized? Because he was being prosecuted under the existing laws of this country for breaking those laws. So he runs for office and he says, we've got to stop the weaponization of the Justice Department. But then what did he do this week? He took some really unusual steps, guys, and I want to focus on this for a minute. He took some really unusual steps. He issued several official proclamations ordering federal investigations into people who worked in his first administration. Did you guys hear about this? These weren't even enemies, political enemies on the Democratic side. These were people who did their job during his first administration And because their job required them to tell the truth and disagree with the president, he's going after them. First of all, any law firms, any law firms that were involved in litigating or doing research to hold him accountable for laws that he broke, he's demanding now that they do free work for him. He's threatening to impeach judges that rule against him. And then he went after Chris Krebs. For those of you that don't remember, Chris Krebs oversaw cybersecurity and infrastructure, cybersecurity infrastructure in the United States. You may not have heard of it, but there's this group called CISA. It's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. He oversaw that group during the first Trump administration. Remember, Trump chose him. This is my guy. This is the guy that's going to be perfect for the job. He hired him. Why does Trump not like it? Can anybody tell me? I'm looking at both screens here, so you can tell me on TikTok and YouTube. Why did Trump decide that he doesn't like Chris Krebs? Do you remember? Do you remember? He told the truth. That's right. What did he tell the truth about? Here's what he told the truth about. When Trump was trying to make the case that the election was stolen in 2020, Chris Krebs, who was hired by Trump, put into place by Trump, approved by Republicans, said that 2020 was the most secure election that we've ever had. Said the election was not stolen. It was the most secure election we've ever had. That put him on the Trump enemy list. And now Trump's going after him. The other individual that Trump is going after is Miles Taylor. Now, for those of you that don't know, Miles Taylor was in Homeland Security in the first Trump administration. And he said anonymously during Trump's first term that there was a resistance among government workers working to mute the president's claims of the election being stolen by getting out there and telling the truth. And Trump thinks that because he did that, because as a member of the federal government hired to tell the truth about what's happening, Trump thinks he should be convicted of treason. Now, for those of you that don't know, the punishment for treason can be $10,000. It can be years in jail, and it can also be and you can just guess what is. So the president is saying that we should unalive people that stood up, even though he hired them, and called out the fact that in 2020, the election wasn't stolen, that it was the most secure election we've ever had. And law firms out there that worked against the president on lawsuits that were filed against the administration to protect voting rights and all these other things, people that may have been working on these cases for the federal government inside the Department of Justice, they're paying $700 million in free work for Trump in order to avoid these punitive proclamations that the Trump administration is making. And even though a judge said that what Trump was trying to do to these law firms was unconstitutional and most likely they would win if they took it to the Supreme Court, they caved in. They didn't want to spend the money to fight it. Maybe they didn't want to rock the boat, but shame on them. Shame on them. So there's a lot going on, guys. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on around the country. There's a lot going on in rural America. There is a lot going on. And we have got to be the ones to stand up against that. So how do you do that? You continue to write those letters. You continue to send those emails. You continue to make those phone calls. But you don't accept the form responses that you're getting. You call them back again and you hold them accountable. When Trump did what he did to Zelensky in the Oval Office, I called my elected officials and I said, you're on record saying that you support Ukraine against Russia. What are you going to do to speak up against what the president did? What are you going to do? Don't take those form responses. Don't take those canned answers. When you get those, you push back and say, no, I want to know what you're going to do. Right now is a great time to be calling about the SAFE Act, where they're trying to suppress the female vote by putting so many hurdles in the way of women voting, especially women who have gotten married or been divorced or changed their last name for whatever reason. They're trying to put all kinds of hurdles in place to prevent women from voting, and we've got to stand up for them. Men, get on the phone and call and defend the rights of the women you love. At a minimum, it's the least we can do. The other thing you can do is you can join us here at the Back 40. I mentioned that before. Go to the website, www.theback40official.com, all spelled out, and join us. The other thing we're getting ready to do that I'm very proud of is we're getting ready to start a podcast. We've been asked to start a podcast. It's going to be great. We've got some incredible guests coming. We're going to kick it off with 6 episodes dealing with rural healthcare, rural education, rural agriculture and farm policy, and the defense of small farms and ranches, and rural economics. And then we're going to be talking, I can't steal the thunder, guys. I'm sorry about that. But we're going to be talking to some really incredible people that grew up in rural America. And some of them you may have seen on your television before. Teaser. For those of you that didn't see it, maybe you're new to the Back 40 and you didn't see it. I was asked a couple of weeks ago to be part of the People's Cabinet at the DNC for rural issues. And I said, I'll do it on one condition. I'll do it on one condition. I don't want to just go out and talk about the things that the Democratic Party is doing for rural America. I want this to be a way for everybody in rural America, regardless of the fact that they're a Democrat or Republican and independent or not into politics at all. I want these listening tours to be a way for us to listen to the people of rural America and to channel those ideas back to the Democratic Party. And Kim Martin immediately said, no problem. No problem. So when we go out there, we're not shilling for the DNC. We're talking to rural people about what they're facing in rural America on their farms and ranches and their jobs in regard to healthcare and schools and housing and everything else. And we're going to take that information back to the Democratic Party to fight for policies that help rural America. It's the only way I would agree to it, because so much of what we do here when we go out to try to change minds is nonpartisan. And it has to be, guys, because in my rural county, if every Democrat voted for the Democrat and 60% of the independents voted for the Democrat, we would still lose because there are that many Republicans in rural America. We've got to change some of their minds, or we're never going to have officials elected that believe in what we believe in. We've got to change their minds. And you're right, some of them will never change, or it's going to take a long time for them to change, and that's okay. But we can't stop fighting the fight because of that. We've got to convince the people who we can convince. And for every Skylar, there are going to be 3 people that come along with us. We've already seen it. We're working right now in the Back 40 to try to put together a group of people that voted for Donald Trump who have now realized that he's bad for rural America policy. And we're going to be putting together a group that can go around or create social media that talks about the fact that they've changed their mind. And it's already happening. There's a group of farmers and ranchers out there called Farmers Against Tariffs already out there, made up of Democrats, independents, Republicans, and people that are not political, that are pushing back against these tariffs because they're bad for rural America. They're just bad for rural America. And we've got to get away from the allegiance to Donald Trump in rural America, where we allow any type of harmful policy to be passed and put in place because we support the man in rural America rather than the policies. Because if we start pushing back against bad policy, the net result of that is going to be that we have to push back against him. That's the bottom line. And there's so much stuff going on. You guys know this. We're drinking from a fire hose right now and trying to push back. And that's why we organize the Back 40. And that's why we're doing what we're trying to do. Okay, guys, you have been very patient with me as I've laid out these issues. I want to answer questions that you've got. If you've got questions about how to push back, if you've got questions about policies that I know about, if you've got questions about the Back 40, if you've got questions about anything, now's your time. Ask those questions. And if somebody could, if you guys wouldn't mind, if moderators, if you could take some of the questions out of TikTok and type them into YouTube here, into the comments, that would be great. And I can get to any of these that we need to. Thank you, Joanne. I appreciate that. I'm doing everything I can. I'm going up to Central Missouri in May and speaking to a group of 300 there. I've got a couple of events in June where I'm going to be in front of, well, gosh, when I go down to Texas, I'm going to be in front of hundreds of Republican cattlemen, talking to them about why we need to change. It's about the Constitution, our continued question. Yeah, I agree with that. 100% witness. I do. We can't take equality away. That's easy for me to say because I'm an old white guy. But I feel like, based on the fact, and I could be wrong, but this is just how I believe. I don't think I'm wrong. I've got a daughter and I've got 3 granddaughters. Three of my 5 grandchildren are girls, and I'm not going to let them grow up in a country where they're second-class citizens. I didn't know any better, guys, as a single dad, than to raise my daughter with the same confidence that I raised my boys with. And it's paid off. She's a badass. And I don't want my granddaughters to grow up in a country where they're second-class citizens. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. Can you please push the neoliberals left? Let me tell you how I feel about that. I think that there is a place in this pushback to save rural America for everybody across that. Wow, I've never seen one of those before. I just got the dragon's head on TikTok, guys. I think that there's a place for everybody across the political spectrum to push back against this. And the reason is because these policies are so detrimental for rural America. You can be a Republican and understand that these policies are bad and vote for politicians that are going to do the right thing, even if they're not in your party. That used to happen all the time. I talk to people all the time that up until Trump came along, never voted a straight ticket, ever. There was a time when it was about what's good policy. Yeah, Vanessa, I don't think it's going to pass, but I don't think we can sit back on our laurels. And I know you don't either, but we can't sit back on our laurels and run the risk that it could happen. We need to be making those calls now to those senators out there. Rural northwestern Iowa. Nice to meet you, Janet. A lot of my people moved down here from Polk County, Iowa on my mom's side to Polk County, Missouri, and started their farms down here in the 1800s. I'm trying, Lisa. Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Well, we'll have the event posted out there. So when I go down to Texas, uh, you can feel free to come down. But I do think that these listening stops we're going to do on part of the DNC, I think we're going to be in front of all different types of people: Democrats, Republicans, independents, non-political people. And I want to do this all over the country. I think I'm hopefully going to be talking with them and Heidi Heitkamp, former Senator Heitkamp, next week to talk about kicking this off and getting out there and doing it. What other questions do you guys have? I want to make sure I answer your questions before we go. My daughter in North Dakota decided to not have kids due to maternity. Yeah, see, and Jennifer, that's just crazy that she has to make that choice. It's just crazy that she has to make that choice. It's not right. And that's what I'm pushing back against. And I know you guys are too. I know you are as well. Will, do you think that farm to table is sustainable for the farmer? I do. I do. The one thing that worries me, though, Bama, in all honesty, is that the Biden administration had dedicated, over $1 billion to fostering farm to table out there so that people could buy directly from farmers and ranchers, and that money's going to go away. So a lot of what we're going to be doing out here is going to have to be done by us. I mean, I buy all my pork and beef products. I buy them directly from the farm. I've got a farm here called DT Farms locally in Southwest Missouri, and I buy my pork from them. I buy my beef from a farmer up by Bolivar, Missouri, and I'm buying more and more of my produce as well, what I don't raise. I got to be honest with you guys, with this bad hip, until I get it replaced, it's hard to get down in the garden. So I've been going to the farmer's market a lot to buy my fruits and vegetables. But I do think it's sustainable, and I think we've got to push it harder and harder and harder. Man, Marie, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, it pains me that that's a country that we live in. It really does. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Guys, there was a little bit of trouble with the donations Friday and today, and I don't know what's going on. We've got a great website builder, but we've just had some hiccups at the beginning here. So we're going to get that fixed on Monday. So if any of you have any problems when you try to get the Back 40 merchandise or make a donation, just know that we're trying to fix that. I've been calling my senators here in Idaho. Good for you, Quantum. Good for you. I hope that I can get an event scheduled in Idaho this year. I really want to try to hit all 50 states. I'm going to take one for the team and try to go to Hawaii even. That's just the kind of guy I am. Not only am I the pretty face behind the Back 40, but I'm going to try to go to all 50 states because we've got agriculture in all 50 states. I'm in Southwest Indiana. Do you know of any groups down here that we can band with? Lee, go to our Discord. If you go to the back40official.com, all spelled out, and you join and let us know you want to be part of the Discord, we can get you into the Discord, and we are organizing by state in there. I think we've got 5 states organized. Another thing that we are going to do, though, Lee, is as we're building out that Back 40 website, we're going to get different organizations around the country by state listed out there on the web state. I know, Jass. I know somebody's got to take one for the team. How's the battle going with Maryland? It's still up in the air. The Republicans are not giving on it. They're trying to do 3 things. They're trying to push back against the Reproductive Rights Amendment. They're trying to push back against the Minimum Wage Amendment. And they're trying to change the way that we do constitutional amendments here in Missouri, so that we can't do it the same way anymore with a simple majority. They're trying to change it so that you have to win a majority inside every congressional district in order to make it happen, which will be crazy. I don't think it is, Nanya. I don't think Oklahoma is organized inside the Discord, so that would be a good one. Thank you, Okra. I appreciate it. I'm in California, but we have a group. Yeah, Indivisible is here as well. We've been partnering with um, Marty McFly, who is a former MAGA person who moved away from the MAGA movement and has been converting people right and left. We did an event with him up in St. Charles, and Indivisible was there. So through Marty's event there in St. Charles, we were able to connect with them, and I'm hoping that big things are going to come out of that. I really am. I really am. Yeah, I worry about the entire country, witness, but especially rural America. I really do. I really think that way of life is in danger. The Democrats that are caving, Schizo, we need to 100% hold their feet to the fire. These 4 Democrats that voted for the SAVE Act, you've got a right to call them, because the SAVE Act would be applied across the country and would have a negative impact on women everywhere. So I think because of that, you have a right to call even elected officials from other states to say vote against it. And I made my phone calls to all 4 of those Democrats to let them know in the House, to let them know that that was a bad move and that I didn't appreciate that for my daughters and granddaughters. What's the best way to make a difference? I'm in Texas. Austin, just keep making your voice heard. Get out there and find like-minded people. Show up. Hey, thank you, Jenny. I think it is, Jenny. Yes, but get out there and make your voice heard, Austin. I'm also trying to put something together with farmers of color. As an old white guy, I don't think that I can be so bold as to say, I can be their voice out there. But I do think that I can help put events together that get their voice out. So for those of you that are asking, are you doing anything with farmers of color? I'm trying to put that together right now. And really, what I'm trying to do is put together a podcast episode that deals directly with that. That's what I'm trying to do. Talk about the challenges that African American farmers and farmers of color face, that kind of thing. Are you familiar with the group Farm Action? Yes. Yes, I am. I follow them on Facebook and I get their updates, Lisa. But thank you for bringing me that to my attention. I'm always willing to take a look at and follow groups that I'm not following, but they're a good group. You're welcome, Julius. Any other questions, guys? Got a little bit of time here, so I want to make sure. I'm a regular. I hate Annis. I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm pretty much a regular now on Don Lemon's show. He has me on quite a bit. Aaron Parnas and Midas Touch. I just haven't been able to break in there. And, I'm not disgruntled about that. Maybe someday they'll figure out I'm out here and they'll give me a little bit of time to talk rural, on the Midas Touch. But right now, I'm absolutely, Don has me on. You mind if I call him Don? No, Don Lemon has me on quite a bit, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, 5 Calls app is good. And I appreciate you thanking me. But listen, it's not just me, guys. It's the whole back 40. It's making an incredible difference across the country. Angel, I'm trying to get out there and talk to everyone about the challenges that people of color face when they're farming. They're still discriminated against. I'm probably telling you something you already know, but they're still discriminated against when it comes to farm loans. They're still discriminated against when it comes to buying property, et cetera. And I'm trying to do my best to just talk about these issues that they face. And then hopefully as the back 40 grows, and we're out there working on this 6-pack program where we're trying to get 6 people elected to Congress that are in districts that were settled by less than 1%. We want to talk about these issues with them. Yeah, JP, I am very worried about rural hospitals. We've got 700 that are about to close in rural America. This is one of the things we talk about regularly on the back 40 is how can we prevent the closure of rural hospitals, et cetera. Thank you, Jamie. Jamie's recruiting for us. Yeah, guys, listen, if you would, while you're here, follow us on TikTok. Subscribe to us on the Back 40 here on YouTube. We're trying to grow and we're trying to get the word out. We've got about 350,000 followers across all platforms that are working with us here on the Back 40. And we're just trying to grow and increase the number of people we have that are fighting for rural America. I think it's great that Bernie and AOC are going out to talk to people in red rural America. I think that's great. Like I said, I'm not one of these people that divides up the Democratic Party based on whether you're a centrist or somebody on the far left, et cetera. I've always believed that everybody inside the party has to work together to have an impact. And if we start drawing lines along, litmus tests along how liberal or how moderate are you, all that's going to do is destroy all the hard work that we're doing. That's my personal opinion, guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a lot of people, guys. Most of our followers, I would say, are from urban America, and they're trying to support, what we're trying to do in rural America because they realize that it's good for the country as a whole. Claymore, I hope you get it too. They're great t-shirts. I got my t-shirt, I got my coffee mug, and we're trying to fight the good fight. We're trying to fight the good fight. All right, let's give it a time for a couple more questions here. Any other questions, guys? I want to answer those while you're on here. We've had another incredible live today. The other day on Thursday, between both platforms, we had 1,200 people in here. Today, we've had about 1,000 to 1,100. That's incredible. That's incredible. I'm not sure what you mean, Lonnie. I'm not sure what you mean. With all the dystopian moves in the red states, I firmly believe red states will have an exodus of talent. Yeah, that's already happening. Catch. That's already happening. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have a population decrease right now in the top 419 ag counties in this country, because the younger folks go off, they go to school, they go to college, and in order to get a good job, et cetera, they don't come back again. And this is leading to decreased population. It's almost impossible to fund the schools. We've got businesses that are leaving in droves, and it's really, really bad for rural America. I went up to northern Missouri to give a speech up there in Chillicothe, Missouri, a few weeks ago, and I went the back way. And I drove through some of these small rural towns on the way, and little towns like Cross Timbers, Missouri, et cetera, that were thriving towns when I was a kid and that had businesses. The roofs are caving in on their downtowns. Most of our rural towns that are within about 30, 40 miles of bigger towns are doing okay. But you get out there where small rural communities have to survive on their own, they are struggling. It is really, really bad. It is really, really bad. And it's not getting better. Thanks, Angel. I appreciate that. And Steph is a critical part of the Back 40. We have a lot of people that are. Steph and Jill. Jill is the moderator queen. She does an incredible job keeping this space friendly and positive and constructive. 100%. 100%. Yeah, Lonnie, I think, disappeared when I asked him the question. Taylor from Texas always votes with GOP. Yeah, it's frustrating, Vanessa. I know that sometimes these folks think that they have to vote this way in order to keep the conservatives in their district happy, but I'm sorry. On the SAFE Act, I just don't see it. If you're going to disenfranchise women, there's no way you can make a cogent, intelligent argument to me that that's a good vote. I'm just not going to buy into it. I've thought about it multiple different ways, and you just can't make an argument to me that suppressing women's votes is a good vote. I'm sorry. Just can't do it. Yeah, Audra, anybody can join the Discord. All you have to do is go to www.theback40official, all spelled out, the Back 40 official, all spelled out, and let us know you want to join the Discord there, and we will get the link to you to join. Anybody can join. You bet. You bet. Brandy, I really don't think the SAFE Act is going to pass in the Senate, but I don't think we can rest on our laurels, to your point, and hope for that. We have got to make sure that we are fighting against this SAVE Act and calling our senators to prevent this from going through. Again, I don't think it'll pass, but if we don't do anything to push back against it and remind them that we don't support it, that's dangerous. That could be a bad thing. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to let them know that we're going to push back against this. Next time, can you talk more about the People's Cabinet and how communication is going to work? Yeah. JP, I can talk a little bit about that right now. We're going to be doing virtual and we're going to be doing in person. I have not had a chance to talk to former Senator Heidkamp yet. What I'm going to really push for is those of you that have been following me for a while, you know that I also do political consulting, and we've got technology available to do town halls as well. So I am going to try to push for, I don't know if this will happen. We're going to do it on the back 40 for sure, but we're going to try to do regional town halls around the country where we take like the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southeast, the Southwest, and then the Midwest. And we want to do town halls about like rural healthcare, where we seek feedback from people about rural healthcare and talk to them about the things that are coming that are going to be bad for rural America. Thanks for the gifts on TikTok, guys. I really appreciate it. But I'm looking at this to be kind of a three-prong approach. Somebody's giving me all kinds of cowboy hats. I appreciate it. I look at this as being a three-prong approach. I want to do live events. I want to do virtual events like town halls, et cetera. And then I'd also like to see us going out there and speaking to people that are doing other events that have already been put in place. Because I know a lot of you that follow me are already out there doing the hard work. And, if we can work with you to get out there as part of this listening tour, that would be great as well. But I call it boots on the ground. I want to go all over the country and I want to talk to people. I'll use my cane and my walking stick until I get this hip replaced. And then after that, I'll be out there on my own 2 feet doing it as well. So that's my idea. Good job calling those senators, Saul. Good job. Good job. What other questions do you guys have while we're here? I will listen. If we can put an event together in Western Pennsylvania, I'll be there. I promise you. If you join the Discord, also on the website, there is a section on the website where you can do a request for an event, but be careful, okay? Because if you request for us to do an event, you're going to actively become a part of making that event happen. Because all of this is about the back 40 and getting folks in the back 40 to work to help us put these events together. So just be careful. If you request for me to come to your geographic area, you're going to get put to work. Okay, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Go to www.theback40official, all spelled out, the back 40 official, all spelled out, and you can sign up there to get updates, etc., from the back 40. We don't sell your data. We don't do a bunch of pitches for you to buy stuff and that kind of thing. We just keep you updated on what's going on. If you let us know there that you want to join the Discord, we will get the Discord link out to you so that you can join. Any other questions, guys? I'm happy to answer them. Saturday's a good day to answer questions. I try to keep the info at the beginning of the live to around an hour and 15 minutes to give you guys the chance to ask questions. Did I see Andy Brashear's interview on Midas Touch? It was really good. I've got it bookmarked, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. This week was wild, guys, as you can imagine, with the announcement of being on the, the reason I don't think it's going to pass the Senate, Apple, is because it just doesn't have the votes there. If you go look at the number of people that are supporting it there, it just doesn't have the votes. But that could change. That's why we need to keep pushing back hard against it. That's why we need to keep pushing hard against it. But no, I do have Andy Brashear's. I do have that interview bookmarked, and I'm going to go watch it. Janelle, they're starting. I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you, but that it's been disappointing to see how long it's taken farmers and ranchers to do the right thing. But you got to remember, there are 30% of us out here that didn't vote for Trump that have been fighting the good fight all along, and they're finally starting to come around. The only thing I can tell you, Janelle, and this is just what I believe from looking at the polling and from living amongst these folks, is that they just didn't think it was going to happen to them. We had our Democratic Congress people and senators out here, telling them, well, he's going to deport illegals, but he's not going to deport, he's only going to deport the criminals. It's not going to be farm workers. And then the first thing he did, of course, was start deporting farm workers, et cetera. So they're learning the hard way. And as they learn the hard way, they're still starting to come around. Yeah, Saul, I already did talk about it. FEMA did, but that's okay. FEMA did say that they're not going to match North Carolina state funds anymore for the recovery from the hurricane out there. Yeah, Marilyn, you're doing a great job of summarizing it. We've got 3 amendments here in Missouri where voters passed these amendments to make them part of the Constitution of the state of Missouri. And our supermajorities in the House and Senate here in Missouri, Republican supermajorities, are trying to stop those things from happening, even though the people of Missouri voted for them. Maryland's do a phenomenal job of laying out there exactly what we're talking about. What other questions do you guys have? Do you think if farmers get a bailout again, they'll be on fighting the good fight now? Listen, there are going to be a lot of them. I mean, I hate to say it, but there are going to be a lot of them who won't. And I say this all the time, guys. We've got to push back against these policies that are bad for rural America because it's the right thing to do. And we're going to be disappointed. I'm disappointed in Skyler. I mean, he came on this live and said Donald Trump should be impeached, and he was coming around. But they knew who to get their funds to first, and when they got him his money, he immediately made the decision to go right back to his old way of thinking. And listen, when you guys see these creators doing these videos about Skyler saying, "I told you so," "We never should have listened in the first place," "You can't get through to MAGA," those videos, I mean, don't kid yourself, guys. Those videos are directed at me. Okay. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay. They've got a right to create whatever, content they want to create, but that's directed at me saying, "Hey, Will, you're an idiot for thinking you can get through to any of these people that supported Donald Trump." And maybe I am. Maybe I'm jousting at windmills. Okay. But I know, based on 30 years of experience in politics, that we can't win in rural America if we don't change some minds. And I'm just not going to give up, because there are people that have done what Skyler has done that have stayed with us and haven't changed their mind and gone back to their old way of thinking. I just am not going to give up on rural America. I can't. Guys, I grew up here. These are my people. I went to small rural schools where the community showed up at Friday night football games and at basketball games. I had the same opportunities. I got a full ride to college in debate because I got the same opportunities in my rural high school that people in urban areas did. When I went to nationals and won 3rd place in the nation in Lincoln Douglas debate, I was debating kids from the Bronx High School of Science and from Downers Grove High School in Chicago and kids from big schools in California. I want kids that are growing up here in rural America to have the same opportunities I did. I want small farms and ranches. I just can't give up on it. I can't do it. And I know to a certain degree that I'm jousting at windmills, but that's who I am. My grandpa taught me to fight for the underdog. And I'm just one of those guys that feels like if I could sit down with everybody in rural America, I could change their mind. And I know that's naive. I know I can't change all of their minds, but I want to change the minds of as many of them as I can. And I just can't give up on rural America. I don't want it to see it become corporatized with Wall Street owning large farms with farmers and ranchers who used to own that property working as sharecroppers on those farms and ranchers. I just can't do it. It's not in me to do it. Do you think right leaning media like Daily Wire and the others are Gen Z version of right wing talk radio? Yeah, I do. I do, Marilyn. I really do. I think that's exactly what they are. I think they're doing the same thing to younger Gen Z folks that talk radio did to my Gen X generation. And that's why you've got, I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but I sit on the board of a PAC called National Ground Game, and they are doing the unf. I'm not a big cusser. I apologize in advance. I know it would make life easier for me, but they're doing the Unfudge America tour where they're going to push back against Charlie Kirk. They're taking some young folks out on the road to go to college campuses to push back against Charlie Kirk. And I think that that's necessary. I think that we need to do the same thing that they're doing. Thank you, witness. I'll continue to speak out. I will. This is growing. Guys, we're growing great guns. I mean, we are growing. The back 40 is growing like crazy. I just started this in June. And I don't even mean the back 40. I just mean getting on social media and talking about these issues. I just started in June. And we've got almost 400,000 followers now across multiple platforms. So it's working. There's something about what we're doing that's working out there, and we're going to continue to do it. I appreciate that, JP. Thank you. I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah, it should be fun, Lionel. I got to go on Off Joe Wagon's podcast about a month ago, a month and a half ago, and I really enjoyed it. We kind of communicate through messaging, but I think it'll be fun too. I think it'll be fun too. Thanks, Apple. I appreciate that. Save the forest and farms. Amen. Amen. People have been leaving the farm since the 70s. That's true. You know, the 80s, every time we've tried this tariff thing, it's led to a rash of people leaving small family farms and ranches. You know, we pushed back really hard against it in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then, you know, it happened again during the Jimmy Carter administration. And it's, you know, it's happening now. It's just never worked out well for rural America. Thanks, Angela. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, you know, we do a lot of that. We do a lot of canning. We do a lot of freeze drying. We talk quite a bit here on the back 40 about, um, you know, about growing your own food and helping the people around you and doing community gardens. Sporting's not doing well, JP. I would have been better off if I would have been a St. Louis fan. They have a better record, but that's okay. That's okay. I am who I am, right? I am who I am. All right, guys, listen. Another great day, another great live. We're going to be live again on Tuesday. We're going to be live again on Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're going to be doing the same thing. We'll have some preformed topics that we go through to talk about what's happening in the United States. And we're going to be taking your questions. There's something happening here, guys. I mean, we had 1,200 people, 1,300 people in our live on Thursday. We had 1,100 people in the live today. What we're doing is making a difference. If you haven't had an opportunity, go out to www.theback40official.com and sign up. We're going to keep educating people. We're going to have our speaking locations out there so that if you want to come see us in person, you can do that. But more importantly, I want to encourage you guys to let your voice be heard as well. We've got a couple of people that are part of the back 40 that when they first started out, they really didn't want to make their voices heard publicly. And now they're making videos, they're getting out there and they're sharing their opinions. They're just doing great work out there. And that's what we're doing, guys. We're trying to not only have my voice be heard, but we're trying to have the voice of everybody in the back 40 to be heard as well. You may have somebody in your family that you're taking care of that relies on Medicaid. Go out there and make a video about it and talk about what it'll mean if that goes away. You might be a teacher in a rural school. Go out there and make a video about it. Talk about what's going to happen if we defund our local rural schools in order to pay for people to go to private schools. Uh, let your story be heard. This isn't all about Will. It's about getting your voice out there as well. So my hope is that you'll go to the back40official.com and you'll register. And then my hope is that you'll keep coming back, that you'll subscribe to us here on TikTok, that you'll follow us on, or you'll subscribe to us here on YouTube. You'll follow us on TikTok and these other platforms, and we'll continue to work together to get out there, to tell these stories. So I really appreciate everything that you guys have done today for us. I appreciate everything that you've done to date. The Back 40 is really making a splash, and we're doing a lot to change the way people are viewing rural America. So I appreciate it. I want everybody to have a great day, and make sure that you come join us again on Thursday evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I'll talk to you guys soon.